Maybe he kept mute.
Yeah, he's mute, but he cannot.
Yeah.
Okay. Bilal response on the group. Yes, he can connect. He can listen for us. Okay. Okay. So let's start. Okay. I think, gentlemen, Ajay and Bilal, is the first time for you to join us for these classes. Am I correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Correct.
No, online classes first time. Yeah.
But you did not attend the classes with us before in the center.
I was attended. I'm from
Okay.
JBK Growth. Yeah.
Okay. I think today we have additional participants will join us, and requested from the management to repeat the first two classes for the staff. So making these first two classes for today and the coming Monday as in review sessions for everyone.
Yeah, it's okay.
So we can have refreshment for us, and for others who are not listening for us before, we can get an introduction for this one. Okay. So our classes for the preparation for the QCDD, which will be mainly to give you an introduction about the exam itself and how it is working, the classes, how the QCDD exam is going to be. Okay, let me take this one. Okay, sorry. Also me, I'm not professional, very professional for this one. Okay. So the purpose for the classes, we are going to conduct it for over the 5 days for 15 hours continuously. The purpose for this one to give you an understanding about the QCDD requirements and the exam preparation and who will be eligible for the exam. So first we'll talk about the hazard classification and giving you the introduction about the NFPA standards. The latest revision is 2018. And we'll talk about mainly for the QCDD regulations, especially for the life safety systems, and the major QCDD approvals for the approvals of the life safety, firefighting, automatic air conditioning, mechanical ventilation, and the fire alarm. And what will be classification for the building construction rating for the fire risk, and the occupancy classification relating to the fire risk. And the main topic for the escape routing and the egress routing, how to calculate it, how to calculate the number of the floors for the maximum habitat heights of the buildings, and the number of basements, etc. In addition to QCDD regulation for each type of occupancy. And the last one will be the process, how to apply for the QCDD, what would be the requirements and the number of stages for the application for the QCDD, either for design or for construction, or requesting for inspection and renewal for the building, renewing for the building certificates, etc. What will be the process for the QCDD? And going for the inspection for QCDD, once your project is ready and completed, we are going to call for the QCDD to come for the inspection. What will be the main points for them to inspect it? How will be the inspection list? And giving you some templates or common questions for the QCDD, how it will be inspected, what points the guys are going to check and inspect on the building. So for the QCDD exam, it is required for the engineer who's working for the supervision, approval, or installation, testing, commissioning, maintenance for the fire protection system. They should be registered and get approval from QCDD Civil Defense. Is it meaning that all the engineers should be certified and passing for the exam? For any company who are working for the construction, installation, testing, commissioning, maintenance, each company should have at minimum one QCDD certified engineer. It doesn't make it mandatory for all of that staff to be certified, but it is required at least one engineer to be certified within the company so they can progress for the approvals. Who will be eligible to pass and to apply for the exam? Number one, the mechanical engineer should be certified UQDA and MMUP, and should be working within a company, and the company should have within the registration and the activity for the company, having for the activity for the firefighting or fire alarm activity, so he can apply. Some companies, like a main contractor, civil contractors, you don't have within the activity registration of the company activity related to the civil defense, fire alarm, or firefighting. So these company engineers, they cannot be registered or certified from the QCDD. QCDD certification, it is given for the engineer subject to his company activities and the nature of work. So not everyone can go for the QCDD, and you can find many of the engineers, mechanical or electrical, they are qualified, they are professional, but the company where they are working is not listed and registered from QCDD, so the exam. That's why the application, it has to go through the PRO. It is online application, and once he applied it and registered for you, within 1 week or 2 weeks time maximum, can get an appointment for the exam. Right now, the exam with the QCDD, it is postponed due to Corona, and I don't know when they are going to open again the exam for the staff, but I think they are making some measurements to make the exam shortly. But normally the exam, it doesn't take longer time for them. Once it is registered, it will not take longer time to get a call for the exam. To pass the exam, as we said, the exam for the QCDD, it will be open book exam. It is not closed book. It is completely an open book. QCDD, they are interested to test your knowledge about the NFPA. As you know, QCDD, they are following NFPA, and it is mandatory to comply with the NFPA, the latest edition of NFPA. QCDD, they have their own regulation or guidelines, which it issued last time. It was 2015. And this one is the master for the QCDD for the application and certifying the building and the check. It is more or less typical to the NFPA, but as an regulation and guidelines applicable within the country, we have to follow the QCDD guidelines. These guidelines, it is available online, and you can download it, free download from the QCDD website. You can download it, and whoever cannot get the documents, I can share it with you. It's easy to download. This will be our main documents as a documents, official documents for the exam from the civil defense itself. This one, it is giving the requirements of the civil defense depending on the occupancy of the building. Is it apartment or hotel or residential or business or industrial or educational, storage, etc. Even within the temporary buildings or construction or building under construction. So this is the way how the QCDD they are checking. And all of these points, you will see that it is complying with NFPA regulations. We'll go through this point, all of these items one by one, and we'll see how to understand what is required. This is a format for the table. For example, for the apartment buildings, what will be the requirements, and we'll talk about this one in details in the next slides. The exam mainly it is calling for the mainly for the QCDD guidelines and to comply with the NFPA latest edition, which is 2018. The standards applicable for the mechanical engineer exam. The chapter from NFPA 10, which is a standard for the potable fire extinguisher. NFPA 13 for the installation of sprinkler systems. 14 for the standpipe and hose system. 20 stationary pumps for the fire protection. 24 for installation of private fire service means and their appurtenances. 25 standard for inspection and the testing and the maintenance for the water-based fire protection system. 92 for the smoke control system. 101 for the life safety code. 2001 for the standard of the clean agent fire extinguisher systems. Most of this one, they are coming questions, but especially for 101, you can see the most of the question, it will come for the 101. Our classes will not, the intention for the class is not to explain the NFPA chapters in full details. You cannot. Even for each chapter of this NFPA, it is taking weeks to explain. For NFPA 10 or 13 or 20 or 101, it will take weeks and weeks to explain it, not less than 35 hours or 40 hours minimum to explain each chapter of the NFPA as it is. But what we are taking from this NFPA, we will focus on the highlight for these chapters of NFPA, what is required from these chapters related to the QCDD application and the exam and the inspection, and what we have to comply and apply it within our design, installation, inspection, maintenance, and operational, etc., as per QCDD. So we are not going to explain the full NFPA chapters for any of this one. No, we will focus only for the requirements of the QCDD, what they needed exactly from each chapter. Keep in mind, these courses will make it to assist you how to pass the exam for the QCDD and passing safely for the exam. So you need to understand in which way the civil defense they are testing, they are checking your knowledge about the NFPA and what they needed from you as mechanical engineer responsible for the buildings to follow and to consider during designing, installation, maintenance, operational, testing, and the commissioning, etc. Okay, so I would like to have this this meaning and this direction for our classes very clear for everyone, not to go or to keep our directional and our aim from this course very successful for everyone. Okay. The classes will go with it. I prefer not to have it in one way. Anytime, please, if you have any question, please unmute your mic and raise your question. It's a two-way. Consider it. It's a workshop, not a class. I'm not the only one talking. I'm going to share with you my knowledge, my experience, my information, but I will be more than happy to listen from you and to stop me anytime for questions. Don't keep your questions till the end of the classes, you will forget. Anytime you have a question, just notify and raise your question, please. As we said, the exam, it's a computer-based exam. It's an open book. They are not checking your memory, how you memorize the NFPA standard, but they are checking how you are familiar with the QCDD guidelines, the regulation, and how you are familiar with the NFPA standards, and you can easily reach the information and get the correct information from NFPA. So that's why they make the exam, it's an open book. And you can find the NFPA standards. It will be available as PDF files on the PC when you are going to the exam. The only concern, it is not searchable. It's good and bad that this option is not, or these files is not searchable. Searchable, it means that anyone can search it quickly and he can find it by search for the wording, might get a correct answer or wrong answer related to the question. But the benefits for this one, they are checking exactly how you are familiar with the NFPA, how you are reading, how you can get the correct information from the NFPA. Which means for you to pass the exam, you need to read the NFPA and be yourself familiar with the NFPA chapters. Open it, read it carefully, be familiar with this one, how the chapters they are structured, how it is categorized for the information, for the standards in the beginning, for the definitions, and going for the chapter details and the topics inside one by one. We'll try to make it as maximum as we can, but as we said, it is your personal exercise and homework. You have to go and read the NFPA yourself and be familiar. By the way, for all of you who is familiar with the NFPA, who have experience and reading the NFPA frequently from time to time? Any of you is familiar with the NFPA and reading frequently from time to time, or not yet? I cannot get an answer. Are you here? You can hear me?
Yes.
Hello, Fazil.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Very good.
Yeah. Just for HVAC side, only for the HVAC side.
Yeah, but for HVAC, you have at least NFPA many chapters related to AC. Exactly. In general, how you are familiar with the NFPA, especially for the HVAC, it will be chapter 92.
92.
Did you get a chance to read the NFPA? Have a look on it, be familiar how it is structured, how it is organized, arranged?
Yeah, exactly. I had gone through some chapters, especially for this staircase pressurization and for the fire dampers, ducts passing through the walls, for that and all.
Okay.
So,
okay, that's good.
Chapters. Yeah, that chapters I have gone through it.
Okay, so this will be very helpful for you. And for other gentlemen? Saint-Lantan? Cannot hear you? Okay. So, as we said that you have to be familiar with the NFPA and making your exercise to read it and prepare yourself for the exam. So the exam preparation, it is two parts. Part of this one, it's my part, which I will try to explain it for you carefully, as maximum as I can. And the second part is depending on you, how you are getting familiar and practicing with the NFPA. The exam itself, it is for almost 1.5 hours, 25 questions. To pass from the question and get the certified, you have to pass 70% minimum from the questions. So we're talking about 14 questions minimum you have to pass. For each question, you will see the mark for next to each question on the screen, so you can at least estimating and expecting if you are counting and getting successfully passing the 70% or not. Applying for the exam, any engineers who have certificate from UPDA, grade A, B, or C, or even trainee can apply for the exam. So it is not mandatory to be only grade A or B. No, even a trainee is acceptable. Okay. So trainee, it means that some engineers, they are 10, 15 years experience, but they did not complete 10 years experience for working with the Qatar, so he will be only trainee. It's not a bad thing for him, but he could be applicable. He can apply also and get certified from QCDD.
Sir, just a doubt. This trainee grades, they are accepting. I heard only the C grade engineers they are accepting.
Again, Fazil?
Sir, I heard that they are accepting only the C grade engineers, not the trainee. I'm not sure about this, but I heard it like that.
No, trainees are accepting a trainee as well, 100%.
Okay,
I have trained many people trainee and passing the exam, and I know many people, they are trainee and certified from QCD. Trainee, it doesn't mean that he's fresh graduated. Trainee, it means that he's still not completed 3 years or minimum to be category C, or 5 years or 10 years working in Qatar. So this is the only meaning of trainee. It doesn't mean that he's fresh graduated, but he can. But within the company, company should have another engineers certified higher than trainee to participate for the work. What does it mean?
Yeah, okay. That means there should be minimum one engineer. Okay.
Exactly. One at least grade B or C for the company. Not necessary to have grade A, but at least grade B or C in addition to the trainee. So the company cannot take a work for firefighting and they have only one certified trainee engineer. They cannot. But if they have category B or C, they can continue and progressing for the work. And many examples for the companies in the market by this way.
Yeah. Okay. Fine, sir. Okay.
So this is a quick introduction for these sessions. Any questions, gentlemen, or shall we go for the next one? No questions? Okay, let us go for the next one. You can see the screen? this one, I consider this presentation is the core for the QCDD exam. Why I consider this one is the core? Because this one, we will talk about the QCDD, the guidelines of the QCDD itself, which is exactly what the QCDs are looking for and what is their requirements for the buildings here and there. And from this one, we will see the requirements of the QCDD, what they need, and how it is linked with the NFPA. What does it mean? This is a format of the guidelines of QCDD, and they are structured for the apartment, hotels, residential, and the different type of buildings as well. We will take one of them. The guidelines itself, it's around 156 pages, 15 pages almost for each type of building. The common one or the most popular one for us, I will take the apartment building as an example, and we'll see how it is applicable, how we can read these guidelines, and from this one, we will see how it is distributed and linked with NFPA here and there. What is this table? And I need you to focus for this one. The screen itself, it's clear. If you want, you can zoom in and out from your PC itself to enlarge the font, to enlarge the screen. You can have a control for zoom in and out from your PC as well. Control with the cursor, mouse cursor, it will zoom in and out. The structure of these tables, you can see here the occupancy classification. Green, it is for low-rise apartment building. Orange for medium-rise apartment, and it has two types, type A and type B. Type A, which you have a medium-rise building higher than 15-meter height till 18 meters, regardless it is 1 story or 2 story or 3. It is talking about the height of the building itself. And the building area, 500 square meter. This one, the floor area for each one. So category A, it's a low-rise building, which it is almost less than 15 meters above ground. So whatever it is under basement, it is not calculated here. 15 meters height of the building above ground floor level, above the street floor level, and the area it is less than 500 square meter. Medium apartment buildings, which is type B, the height it is vary from 18 meter up to 28 meter, and the build-up area for each floor less than 1,000 square meters. The high-rise apartment building, the height it is higher than 28 meters, and the built area it is unlimited area. So this is the 4 categories of the building as per QCDD definitions. The columns here, it is showing the first one, the serial number and category. The second is the fire safety provisions. The third one, it is showing the minimum requirements. And we'll see how these minimum requirements is linked with the NFPA. And for each one, this is the minimum requirement, how it is applicable for the building green, type A, or medium, or low or high-rise apartment. So you can see how these tables and how these guidelines is working. Let us start with the first part, talking about the building and the site access for the firefighting and rescue. So starting from the outside of the building as a site access for the building. For the site access, it is required 4-meter minimum clear width for the site and 4.5-meter minimum clear height. And it is mandatory for low-rise and the medium and the high-rise building. Why it is required this width and the height access around the site of the building? Have an idea? Gentlemen, you can unmute your mic and be interactive within the classes if you want.
Hello, maybe to give access to the fire cars to go for firefighting, rounding.
Exactly. This is exactly the purpose for this one, to have the fire truck reaching the site around, to have an access for it. And the access for the road, it is required to have a minimum dimension for the road around 4-meter minimum width, and the road it has to take 24 tons load capacity, which will be the tons for the truck itself. So it is required to have an access 4-meter minimum width, and the capacity of the road 24 load capacity. And it is required for the low-rise building, but not required for the medium or the high-rise building as well. The fire engine hard escape. Fire engine hard escape, hard standing, it means that the area to be fully reserved for the fire engine, to allow for the fire engine to stand and having a permanent place for the parking for the fire engine, for the fire truck. This one, it is not required for the low-rise building, but it is required for the minimum rise building when the building habitable height exceeding 10 meters, and it is mandatory required for the high-rise building. The minimum requires for the fire engine hard standing to have a length of the number based on the gross floor area of the building, to have a minimum dimension 6 meters by 15 meters as a minimum, with longer side parallel to the facade of the building. And you can see this hard standing where you have the yellow marked on the floors, and having a signage for the within the building. This one for the firefighting or fire engine hard standing. Not required for the low-rise building. It is required if the high-rise, the medium rise building exceeding habitable area excess 10 meters, and it is mandatory for the high-rise buildings. The Fire Command Center, FCC room, it is not required for the low-rise, not required for the medium, but it is mandatory required for the high-rise building. What is the minimum required for the FCC? With the high-rise building and the other than high-rise, for emergency voice communication system and or smoke control system. The minimum requires for the area of the FCC room to be 9 meters square minimum, and the least dimension is 2.5 meters. So any dimension, any width, any side of the room to be not less than 2.5 meters, and the overall area of the room not less than 9 square meters. At least to have one 1 meter clearance from all equipment. The enclosure for the room, it should be 2-hour fire rated, provided with a permanently marked exterior entrance, have a direct access outside. Instead of dedicated fire rated room, lobbies or other spaces adjacent to the main entrance of the building could be offered. The function for this FCC room, it will be the main center and the main operational for the fire commander in case of fire. He can control and he can monitor and accessing for the building. That's why it should have a direct access for the outside, and it should have a fire rated enclosure for 2 hours. And the equipment inside this FC room, it has a main fire alarm control panel or repeated fire alarm control panel. It has the mimic panel to show the fire alarm and the location. It had all the control for the elevators. Even the elevators, it can have a override control panel for the elevator. In case of fire, the elevators only is allowed is a firefighting lift. But from this command center, they are asking for the overriding control panel to have a control for all the elevator, including the fire alarm, the firefighting lift, and all other lifts as well. Talking about the fire lift for the building equal or more than 20 meter above a engine access level. This is the minimum requirements. For the low-rise building, it is less than 28 meters, so it is not applicable. Medium rise is not applicable, and it is required for the high-rise building. But even for the buildings which have 9 meters below the level of the exit discharge, it will be required. Either it is low-rise or medium or high-rise building. The definition for the exit discharge, it means that the exit for the outside the building, which we call it the assembly point, and the discharge outside the building, which mainly for the ground floor. So any building has a construction below the ground level or the exit discharge by 9 meters, 1 basement or 2 basement or 3 should have a fire lift within the building. Even the building is low rise or medium rise, the height above the ground floor less than 15 or 18, but it has a basement level exceeding 9 meters, it becomes mandatory to have the fire lift. The requirements, the fire lift should serve all habitable floors contained within a dedicated protected shaft, approached by firefighting lobby at each story, adjacent and accessible to an exit staircase, fire service access elevator and the fire lift as per NFPA 5000, chapter 5412. Okay, so you can see here now, even within the QCDD guidelines, they are linked and the guiding for the NFPA related chapter and clause. Ambulance, stretcher accommodation, elevator lift as per NFPA 5000. It is not applicable, but it is required for the high-rise building, not required for the low-rise and the medium-rise, but required for the high-rise building. When required, at least 1 fire lift for every 900 square meter area. So wherever the built-up area exceeding 900 square meter, you should have a floor fire lift. Okay, so the floor, the built-up area per floor exceeding 900 square meter, for each one you should have a fire lift. And the purpose for this one, to provide an access for the fireman accessing everywhere in the building in a quicker way. This is related to the site and the structure for the access from the street, from the site, from the fire commander and the fire lift. Going in details, the main egress, which is the escape routing, and the main egress, what will be the requirements? General requirements for the mean of egress, separation of mean of egress, complying with Chapter 7 of NFPA 101. Okay, so now he is really did not specify, QCDD did not specify what exactly the requirements for the mean of egress here, but they are saying you have to comply with Chapter 7 NFPA, and it is mandatory for all the buildings. That's why when we go for NFPA 101, the means of egress and escape routing, we have to focus on chapter number 7 to see what is exactly the requirements. Exit access and the corridors, serving an area having an occupant load exceeding 30. It has to be 1 hour fire rated for all type of building. Connected 3 or fewer stairs, 1 hour fire rated. Exceeding 4 or more, 2 hour fire rating. Opening protection, fire door assemblies equipped with door closer, it is required. And I want you to remember and memorize these guidelines because when we go for the NFPA 101 Chapter 7, you will see exactly what is the requirement for the NFPA and how it is complying with the QCDD. That's why I start these classes with the requirements of the NFPA, so we know exactly what will be our direction and which way. So focusing for the NFPA, when we go for this one, we focus for the QCDD requirements, and we can see how it is linked with the NFPA chapters. Again, for the egress routing, construction, unlimited or non-combustible materials, it is required. Limited or non-combustible materials, limited or non-combustible materials is required. Opening and penetration in exit enclosure, complying with Chapter 7, 101. So it is permitted with a condition. It means that checking what is the requirements of NFPA 101 and apply. So it is permitted. The exit headroom not less than 2,285 mm, and it is required. Headrooms on stairs not less than 2,285 mm, it is required for all. Walking service in the means of egress should comply with Chapter 701. You can see here again, did not specify exactly what is the requirements, but you have to comply with 101. A change in level, complying with 101. A change of level for the mean of egress, we'll see in the 101, NFPA 101 Chapter 7. What does it mean, the changing of the level? If you have a ramp with a slope, what will be the requirements? If you have a step or a changing from the level, you have to comply with the NFPA to provide an indication, to put signage, to put an emergency lighting, to put a directional for this one, and informing the people there is a direction, there is a changing for the level, there is a step here, you have to be notified. All of this one, it is indicated in the NFPA 101 for Chapter 7, and the QCDD, they are guiding you comply with the NFPA exactly. Guards and the protection provided at the open side of the mean of egress, 760 mm above the floor and the finished ground floor, and it is required. Implement to egress, not permitted. Impediment to egress is not permitted, not allowed. Means of egress, reliability, continuous, maintained free of all obstruction of impediment, and it is mandatory. Should not be occupied, should not have any storage area, should not be utilized for any other activities, and it should be completely free from any loose or permanent furniture. Furnishing and decoration, furniture, movable object, and mirrors is not permitted at all. And this will be also part from the NFPA. The other one for means of egress, the components. So this is the general requirements for means of egress. The components of means of egress, it is starting from the doors itself, and it should be a fire door. What is the definition of the fire door and what we have to consider? Just to comply with NFPA 101, Chapter 7. So you see here, when QCDDs are talking about the means of egress NFPA 101, they are focusing on Chapter 7. That's why in our study for 101, we will go direct for Chapter 7 and take it in details, not covering all the chapters of 101 to talk about it. QCDDs, they are focusing on chapter number 7 as well. Horizontal sliding doors comply with 101. Vertical rolling doors comply with 101. It is not permitted. Revolving doors complying with 101, and it is permitted. Permitted, it means that it is acceptable with some conditions. Self-closing device, doors are required to be normally kept closed, and it is required with self-closing facility. Just a closer for the doors. Self-closing, it is required. So this is regarding the doors. And what will be the fire rating and the direction for the doors and the width of the doors, etc. This will be comply with chapter number 701. The second component from the egress, the stairs, comply with chapter 7, and it is required. Dimension of the stair for the standard stairs, for a fewer than 50 person, the clear width, it should be 915. And for more than 2,000 person, for the overall building, definitely, it will be 1120, 1,120 mm minimum. For greater than 2,000 persons, the clear width, it has to be 1,420 millimeter as well. Okay. This is the requirement. But I think even for this one, having for low-rise building, 2,000 person with a building 15 meter, less than 15 meter height, and the built-up area for per one floor 500 square meter, I don't think it will accommodate 2,000 persons. But I don't know why the QCDs are putting here. But I see, from my point, it's not applicable for this case. It could be applicable for the high-rise buildings or even the medium. It's a little bit difficult, but this is how the guidelines is presented. For the spiral stair, complying with NFPA 101. A spiral stair, which you have a spiral linking stairs. A spiral could be wooden, could be metallic, etc. It is calling to comply with the NFPA, Chapter 701, which is talking here. It is allowed within the low-rise building. It is permitted only within a single dwelling unit. So if you have a single dwelling unit, but in 2 floors, you can have the spiral stair and consider the spiral stair as a part of the egress. It could be spiral stair existing within the building, but the subject here not considering this spiral stair as a part of the egress routing and escaping the people from the building. Take it out from your routing, because we are going to calculate the width and the capacity for the egress routing, and the length of the egress routing not exceeding a certain length depending on the building and the number of the people. That's why the spiral is not acceptable unless it is existing within one dwelling unit, 2 floors. It could be accepted. For the curved stair, it is not permitted. For the windows, it is permitted with a condition. Guards and handrail, it is required, and we'll see what will be the requirements for even the guards and the handrails of the stair. So you have to provide it. Anyone can give us an idea what is the requirements for the handrails within the stair? Did you check before within your project and the experience with QCD what they are looking for? Anyone have an idea? Doesn't have an idea?
Safety, maybe safety for people, safety for firefighters.
No, what is the requirements for the handrails? The handrails, they are saying we need handrails, and it is required for all type of buildings and all height of the buildings. What is the requirements you have to consider for the handrails? Okay, we'll give you a quick idea about the handrails. The handrails, it has to be continuously starting from the edge of the walls, and to be on both sides, right and left for the stairs, and it should be continuously even within the standing landing step of the stair and the diversion, etc. It has to be continuous without any cutting. Okay, so to avoid any when the people they are running, to avoid any hinging or stopping the people, their clothes, it will go inside the handrail itself. So it has some details for the handrail and the height of the handrail and the curve, how it will be. All of this one, it will be presented within the NFPA chapter 101, chapter 7. Okay. Enclosure and the protection for the stairs, complying with NFPA 100, chapter 1, chapter 7, 101. Enclosures, all inside the stair serving as an exit component. Doors, fire rated. For less than 3 stories, it has to be 1 hour fire rated. For enclosure, for more than 3 stories, it has to be 1 hour fire rated as well. For the single, for the low rise, 1.5 fire rated, or 2 hour fire rated for type B. Enclosure exemption, penetrating 1 floor level to serving mezzanine only. It is permitted, it is allowed with the conditions, and we'll see what will be the condition when we go for the 101, the opening and the dimensioning for this one. And the enclosure, the exposures, wall and the opening within 3050 mm horizontally for an exterior stairway enclosure should be 1 hour fire rated. Usable space within exit enclosure is not permitted at all. you cannot make any usable area within the stairs. Is not allowed. In storage, etc., not allowed. Even location under the stairs, it is not permitted at all to utilize it. A stairway identification to identify and giving direction. It is serving 3 or more stories is required. Exit stair path marking all stair components. It is required. Perimeter demarcation marking complying with NFPA 101 is required. Lock and latch alarm device complying with 101 is permitted. Re-enter provision. Locked stair exceeding 4 stores is not required, and it is required for the medium and the high-rise building. So for the point here, lock and latches and the alarm devices to comply with 101 is permitted. What does it mean? We are talking about the stair and the exit within the exit routing, which means that for the stairs, if you have a door on the stair giving an access for the staircase, it could be locked, it could be latches, could be with alarm devices, like an access control. It is allowed, but it should be permitted. It means that allowed with a condition. In case of fire, the access control panel for this door, it has to be connected for the fire alarm panel. In case of fire, all the access control doors should be automatically released and opened. Okay, so this is a way to give an access, so it is allowed, but with a permission as per the NFPA. For the ramps, complying with Chapter 701 is permitted. As a secondary exit for one basement level is permitted. What does it mean this ramp is permitted? The ramp itself, like for the basement levels, from ground floor to the first basement, you have a ramp, and you have from basement 1 to basement 2 another ramp, etc. You can consider the ramp from the ground floor to the first basement, only this one, for only one basement level, as a secondary exit. So you can allow it to have it within the basement levels from first basement to the ground floor. Can consider this ramp as a part from the exit, the egress routing or the escape way. It could be allowed. But the ramp between the basement 1 and the basement 2 or basement 2 to basement 3 cannot be considered as a part from the egress routing. Why they are allowing only for the basement 1 and did not allow for the other levels of the basement? Any idea? Okay, I can explain it for you. You know the smoke, when it is happening in case of fire, you should have a smoke management system within the basement levels, which we'll talk about it later on. But even in case of fire, the most dangerous things is the smoke, and the smoke, it will be in the high, it will be accumulated and gathered in the high level of the area. So if you have a ramp, the ramp, it is supposed to be, if you have a smoke, the smoke, it is going within the ramp itself. And the people, the smoke, it is stopping the people and not allowing them to breathing well, and they cannot see. So it will be a source of accident, and the people, they will fall down and rolling back. So it will be very dangerous to allow people to go through the ramp in case of fire. That's why the ramp is not allowed to be considered as a routing for escape, except for the ramp between the basement 1, the first basement, and the ground floor. because it is open to the atmosphere and open to the space from the ground floor. That's why the smoke, it will not be concentrated. It will, and the people, they can go from this one to go for the exit discharge outside the building. So this is the only case they can consider the ramp as a part from the exit as a secondary exit, only for the first basement. Roof access as well, as a part from the escape routing. The roof access could be considered if you have a building equal or more than 4 stories, ground plus 3, or roof 12 meters above guard plan. Access for the roof, it is mandatory. When open stairs are permitted, it is not applicable. One at each 9,300 square meter roof area or flat floors, it is required in this case. Roof access components, a smoke vent for fixed wall openings at the top of the stairwell with a minimum area of 1.5 meters square. It is required within the low-rise building. For the medium rise, not applicable for single exit, and for type B, not applicable, and not applicable for the high rise. So this one, it is talking only for the low-rise buildings. The smoke roof enclosure for the fire rating. For the stair enclosure, it is required. All inside the stair serving as an exit is required. For the firefighting lobby, in every fire lift provision adjacent and accessible to the exit staircase is required in every fire lift provision, is mandatory. Serves as a common lobby for both fire lift and adjacent exit stair. The area for this fire lift lobby, 6 square meter minimum working space. Area less than side dimension. The area least side dimension 2 meters at least. And this one provision at the level of exit discharge is not required. For the firefighting lobby, doors and walls enclosure, 1 hour fire rated, fire protection rated, or firefighting resistance for 2 hours, and it is applicable only required for the high-rise buildings. This one we're talking about the enclosure, but when we talk about the smoke ventilation and the pressurization, we will see how it is required as per the NFPA 92. For the smoke stop lobby, for the high-rise building with habitable height more than 28 meters, it is required. So this one is applicable only for the building where we have a height more than 28 meters. For the low rise and the medium rise is not required. Basement level exceeding 9 meters is required in this case. Building travelers more than 5 floors, including basement, and belongs to the place of public resort, it is not applicable. The area for this smoke stop lobby, 3 meter square meter is minimum, least dimension 1.8, and it is required only for the high rise, as we said. Provision at the level of exit discharge, it is only required here. A smoke stop lobby and wall enclosure, 1.5 fire protection rating of fire resistance rating 2 hours. Horizontal exit complying with NFPA 101. Exit pathways and corridors. The enclosure and the separation fire resistance required 1 hour fire rated as a minimum, as per NFPA 101 Chapter 7. The minimum width not less than 1/3 of the width of the exit stair, and it is required as per NFPA as well. Escalator and moving walks is not permitted at all, not allowed. Fire escape stairs comply with 101, it is permitted. Fire escape ladders permitted. Slide escapes permitted.